Yeah, thanks very much.
Take time there to gather your, take your breath.
Trying to come from the Public Accounts Committee to here with several flights of stairs, so apologies for that. I suppose, like many aspects of COVID, the full impact on the workforce, I think, is probably yet to be seen. And it'll likely take years for that for us to fully comprehend. The massive shifts that have taken place. The department's own estimate is between 25 and 56,000 people are expected to be laid off as a result of COVID, and that's not just during COVID, but that will be something that will continue, and it will be a residual. Thanks a million. We're most likely to see these layoffs in sectors which have still yet to bounce back, such as hospitality, catering companies, leisure centres and large-scale event work. And indeed, there's a lot of tax, for example, warehoused. There's a lot of additional debt in particular sectors. And the viability in that context is going to be determined by just how robust the recovery is, and I don't think we can assume that there won't be further interruptions. Let's hope there won't be, but there's a real issue there. From March 2020 to September of last year, thousands of workers really existed in a limbo. They were laid off or they were shifted onto part-time during the pandemic, and that was very understandable. In many cases, they watched the place of work struggling. They knew the job wasn't going to be there for them to return to in many cases. And like, I would have come across cases where people had been made maybe 20 years in a job. They weren't sure if, maybe in a pub, for example, they weren't sure if that pub was going to reopen. If it did reopen and they had taken a job in the meantime, where were they going to be in terms of redundancy rights, things like that. The emergency measures introduced in March 2020 suspended workers' rights to the redundancy from their employer. When it ended in September the 30th, workers were left in a situation where they could be penalised under the terms of the Redundancy Payments Act, which doesn't recognise layoff periods within the final 3 years of employment as reckonable service. Under those rules, COVID layoff periods wouldn't be counted when their statutory redundancy was calculated. Thankfully, this bill will amend that situation and bridge the gap in the redundancy payments for those who have been laid off during COVID. And it's welcome that the department is acting on this particular manner, and they've engaged with SIP2 and ICTU on that. And I think there's going to be quite a bit of that kind of patching up to in the context of COVID. I note that the original intention was to have this bill passed before Christmas. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. We're now in a situation where some workers have been left without payments for 3 months. That's a very long time for someone to be waiting for a vital payment, especially over the Christmas period where the household costs are so high. I also accept it does take time to frame legislation, and there is a pipeline of legislation, and and this would have been put onto that conveyor belt, if you like. In fact, in my own constituency, staff at the Selbridge House Hotel received their redundancy notice last November with the promise that they'll receive payment before Christmas. Their state of limbo continues to today. No statutory payments have issued. In fact, the hotel's owner has dangled an idea of a 10% gratuity to their statutory entitlements in exchange to be legally bound to, a gagging clause, if you like. That was reported in a newspaper. It's not something that is in the Business Post, and that was reported several times. And I find that situation unacceptable. I've been constantly onto the various departments about to try and get to some finality in this particular case. This bill is very welcome and it needs to be passed urgently, but I wish there had been some foresight in terms of having this bill ready as soon as the suspension of those redundancies was lifted. But as I say, very happy to support it. I think it's very welcome, and if there's a criticism, it's just that if it could have been done sooner, I think that would have made a significant difference to people. Thank you.